Good afternoon, wherever you happen to be on this incredible planet that we call Earth, and indeed that we have no choice but to call home. You are currently on a live afternoon game drive here in the wilds of the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park. 8 million acres of magnificent and untrammeled wilderness wonderland, and we're on a little section on the western end, about 3,500 to 4,000 acres, called Juma, and just to the west of us, a little piece called Arathusa. Now, my name is James Hendry, in case you were wondering, and on camera, filming me as I perform what is, well, something of a bush stunt, I suppose, is Brian. And Brian has enough clothing to see him through a prolonged expedition to the Arctic. This is because the temperature is varying between fairly warm, around about 22 or 23 degrees Celsius, probably down to about 17 degrees Celsius, depending on what the rain's doing and what the wind is doing. It's that means it's about 63 degrees Fahrenheit and possibly pushing up to about 73, I think. The temperature of Fahrenheit is still a deeply confusing thing to me, as it is to most of us who've moved into the 20th century. Now, on the other vehicle today we have Scott and Jean-Dre. They will be going to try and relocate those two enormous, magnificent male lions that we had this morning, that he had this morning. And I am, apart from sort of standing up here performing something of a showing off stunt, am trying to see if I can't spot the Nkuhuma Pride, or the remnants thereof, from here. Now, they were around this area apparently this morning. There were tracks. We didn't find them, and I'm rather hoping I'll be able to find those 3 lionesses who were seen chasing the buffalo yesterday evening. Please remember, this is a live afternoon game drive safari, wherever you happen to be in the world, and whatever time it is where you are. Please, we do love to hear from you. If you would like to talk to us on the Twitter, tweet away happily like a red-breasted canary, hashtag Safari Live. A red-breasted canary, of course, doesn't occur here. I've made that up. I don't know why, but there it is. Then if you're on the email, questions@wildearth.tv, and we would love to hear from you. Give us your comments, give us your questions, talking about the lions and the great things that are going on with them. And so please send us your theories and your thoughts. We do love to hear from you. Last thing before I try and decamp from this scotia tree, weeping boerbean, is to say that in the control room today we have got Nikki Alston and Tara Dales, and they will be pushing the buttons and twiddling the knobs. And of course Eugene is off trying to fix the technical difficulties that mercifully have not plagued us today. Right, Brian, I'm going to now try and climb onto this tree in an elegant fashion. Feel free to pan away from me at your earliest convenience.
I'm tight on you, James, I'm tight.
Alternatively, just watch. And should you hear a scream, come and help me. One day that's going to go wrong. Mercifully, it wasn't today. Right, here we go. Wasn't that athletic, Brian?
That was incredible.
Not bad for a 74-year-old man, is it? Okay. Right, we're going to just drive off onto the road out here and see if we can't pick up some tracks of those lions. As you can possibly see, the sky is starting to spit upon us slightly. Here we go. So, as we continue to wonder what's going on with the lions, some very clever comments from everybody this morning, that apparently those were the Selati males. It was the Selati males that we saw this morning. I don't know where they come from or what they're doing here, but they were marking territory, which of course is very odd indeed. Sorry, we don't have Tara in final control. It is Louise. I didn't mean to cast aspersions on her. Hello, Louise. Nice to have you with us. So we're just going to do a couple of loops around the blocks here, see if we can't find some tracks, and then we'll reassess from that point. I would also be very much appreciative of those of you who saw those lions being harassed last night at the waterhole on the Juma Dam Cam. If you could perhaps tell us who was harassing them. Was it the 3 females or was it those 2 males that we saw today? I know you did give us an update about the 2 males that eventually led to us finding them, so thank you very much for that. But if you could tell us perhaps about the 3, or what was chasing the buffalo when they came to the dam yesterday, that would be great. Right. I do believe also you're going to lose a little bit of picture now as Brian cleans off the spots of rain. And Donna, thank you for your question about whether or not I'm going to build a tree house. Donna, I am not a practical man. Were I to build a tree house, I would almost certainly fall out of it and die on my first night. So I think that I will not be building a tree house. I might get someone else to do it for me. Jamie, I know, is extremely practical with her hands, so I might ask her to do it. The buffalo apparently also came back onto the reserve sometime, but it may be a different herd. They've come on to an area roundabout where they were seen yesterday, so we'll head off there as well in our attempt to find out where the lions are and what they're doing. Ominous skies, as you can see. It has been spittling on and off during the day. Alright, now without further ado, I think that instead of looking at me, we should go across to look at something slightly more impressive. So I'm going to hand you over to Scott, who, well, while he is more impressive than me, he's looking at something even more impressive than he. So I'll see you just now, hopefully with some good news.
Welcome on board, everyone, and I'm sure you've got off to an entertaining start with James. We've been lucky enough to relocate on these 2 large male lions that we found this morning, and as you can see, one of them is fast asleep. The other one, which is a little bit more nervous of the vehicles, is lying up in a very thick bush where Jean-Andre is pointing the camera now, and you can maybe make out a caramel blur within that thick vegetation. And thanks very much to Chris Rowe Cropper and others who sent through updates and info on these males. We weren't exactly sure who they were, and they are believed to be the Selati males. We sadly didn't get a close enough look at them this morning, but if we do get to see them yawning a little bit later, one of them has got a broken bottom left canine. So that's an update which will help us confirm that it is in fact them, but it certainly does make sense in terms of the area that they move in, and that is further north of us in the Manyaleti Reserve, where they spend more time typically. And we also got some updates through from Diane, so thanks very much Chris, Diane, and others that did send through those updates. As you can see, we parked in a bit of a precarious spot here. There was no other way of us getting you a visual other than to creep down into this little thicket, and at least we do have a view of them now. It'll be interesting to see how long they sleep for. I'm feeling confident they're going to get up a little bit earlier than we usually see the lion because of a couple of reasons. They're quite empty-bellied, so I think food and hunger will drive them to move quickly, and also this cool weather is very suited to the big cats. They don't like moving around when it's very hot, so this cool drizzly weather will be great. And the third very important factor is that they're kind of in no man's land here. They're going to be a little bit more nervous, a little bit more anxious. They're not too sure of this territory. I've never seen them here before. It's not to say they haven't been here, But interestingly, this morning they were vocalizing at least once here on Juma, and that was seen at the Juma waterhole at around 5:15, and it helped us to eventually track them down in this area not far from the Juma waterhole. On top of the vocalizations, which is a clear communication from them to other lion that they are not scared of being in this new area, they were also scent marking. So they're definitely coming here with purpose and with meaning, and they are not flying below the radar as male lions who are not bold and confident would sometimes do. Now, as I said, the one individual is a little bit nervous. The one that's closer to us here has got a distinctive limp, and it seems like the muscles on his back left leg aren't quite as big as they should, so I'm not sure exactly what injury would have caused this slight breakdown in muscle mass. And I'm sure when we do get to see him move for the first time after he's been lying down, he'll probably limp. But as he continues to move a little bit more, the wound, as very often it happens with the wild animals out here, begins to kind of warm up, and then he should be pacing along with very little evidence of the injury. But that's something we can expect to see a little bit later. They're incredibly majestic males, and I think they're probably a little bit younger than the Matimba males. They certainly look a little bit younger, in slightly better condition, and their manes are dark and beautiful. And the other individual, who we can't see now but we will see later, has these incredibly piercing eyes, and he was the first one that we spent time with and looked at, and it was quite bone chilling as he lay flattened in the grass staring us down. And I just mentioned that I think they're a little bit younger than the Matimba males, and Carla's just asked to know exactly how old they are, and thanks to an update from Diane, Carla, I can provide you with this information. So thank you, Diane, for this information. Apparently they were born in 2007, so that would put them at around 8 years old, which is the rough guess that I did come up with. I said they were probably 7, 8 or 9. The Matimba males are a little bit older than that, and they're certainly showing signs of their age. Whereas these guys, you could say, are in their prime. Now, it'll be interesting to know what exactly caused them to all of a sudden move from their current territory into this area. But they've possibly got wind of a shift and a change. Their hearing and senses are far better than ours, so they've probably heard the commotion unfolding here between the Birmingham males and the Matimba males, and have probably thought it might be worth moving into this area to try and also get involved in the action and try and acquire some more real estate. And all male animals will try, especially the territorial animals like lion and leopard, will continually try and increase their territory, and that will be their genetic drive to try and procreate with as many females as possible. And the more land they have, the more prides of lioness they will be able to service. You may have heard the cry of a fish eagle ring out a little bit earlier. Oh, wonderful. I think Jean may miraculously, oh no, well, the lion just popped its head up, so we're going to stay on the line, but the fish eagle was floating around above us, and there it calls again. And isn't he such a beautiful big male? Holding his head up into the wind. Oh, big yawn. Now, even though some of you feel strongly that this could be the Selati males, and I'm happy to jump on board with that theory for the time being, we haven't got any 100% confirmation that this is necessarily the case. And Deb in Ohio is still querying that fact, and she's hoping that it's the two other members of the Matimba coalition So 2 Matimba males who've been spending time to the north of us in the Manyeleti, and I threw out a theory this morning that possibly they have come back to help their old coalition members retain their territory. And wouldn't that be an incredible story if it is in fact the case? Deb, it's certainly not cast in stone that these are the Selati males, so there certainly is a chance. And once we get some more footage of them and more pictures, we'll be able to send them out to the various guides and get them to give their opinions. We've thankfully got friends surrounding us in wilderness areas here, so we will be able to work out in a bit of time whether these are in fact the Selatis or the Matimbas. Either way though, whether it's the Matimbas or the Selatis, the bottom line is that 2 big males that ordinarily don't spend time here are coming here on a mission. And we can certainly expect to see things get spiced up here in an already chaotic scenario regarding the lions and their movements. It'll be interesting to know if these males have spent much time with the Nkuhuma pride, which is another thing that we need to think about and discuss, as let's hope that these guys don't cause any trouble with those lioness, the remaining members of that pride. The junior will certainly also be at risk if he comes across them. And Colleen in Virginia Beach has just asked a question on that fact: what will happen if Junior comes across these big old boys? And Colleen, like I said, I don't think that it'll be a good thing for him if he comes across them. If he were to come across younger males, I think it would be a lot more likely that he would try and, after an initial scrap, try and kiss and make up and form a coalition. But these guys, I think, are established and wouldn't be hugely interested in acquiring a youngster like Junior. That's as far as I think. And you'll probably find their initial reaction is to attack. And there is a small chance that after a small skirmish that they could resolve things with him, but the initial thing when they see another male lion will either be to flee if they don't feel confident, or to attack. And in their case, they're certainly in a very powerful position. Their manes are far larger than theirs. They're 2.5 times the age of him, so their experience is far greater than his. And what's important about their manes, back to that, is that it's essentially a massive helmet, and they have their manes for aesthetic reasons, but even a male lion without a mane would still be allowed to mate with lioness. So it's not a prerequisite for the lioness to see a big beautiful mane and then be more inclined to mate with the male. That mane is there to serve as protection for the male lions who live a highly violent and aggressive lifestyle. And Junior's mane is nowhere near the size of theirs, so he would be in serious trouble for a number of reasons if they got a hold of him. He's probably not too far from here. They were last seen last night on Sibambili, and he actually had a small buffalo calf that we presume he killed himself. And interestingly, there was one other young lioness with him, and when another lioness from the Nkuhuma pride rejoined up with them, the lioness got a fright and ran away. So there was a bit of confusion between those 3 Nkuhuma pride members, and they were probably about 2 miles west of where we are now. I think the other 3 members could still be on Juma, according to the tracks that I was following up this morning. Initially, when we were in a wild hunt for these guys, we also had some tracks of the Nkuhuma pride. So I'm hoping James has a little bit of luck scratching around Treehouse Dam, Twin Dams, that area. That's where I feel that they could be hiding out. So the Nkuhumas are nearby, and they will be wanting to reunite as a pride of 6. They're currently split up into 2 different groups of 3. So interesting stuff will happen there. Also, there was no confirmation of where exactly the Birmingham boys were this morning, and that would be the ultimate showdown. If we got to see the 5 of them confront these 2 boys, what would happen? It's impossible to say. The Matimbas kind of made way for the Birmingham males, but these guys might not do the same thing, and there could be an almighty battle that breaks loose. And for that reason, just to keep you all updated, I'm not sure if James has touched on it, but the plans for this evening, because there's so much potential excitement, is that we will keep one vehicle with the lion, and that'll be us for as long as we can. And depending on the weather and what's going on with the lion, we may still do the fireside chat with James and Jamie and Brent, and it'll be something different, something we haven't done before. Some of the crew at the fire, some of us out here in the field, but it's just something to think about. I also must say I am concerned with this weather. The clouds around us are very, very dark, and sadly the majority of the dark clouds are right behind the vehicle, but this gloomy weather could mean we have some rain issues, which would be terrible timing, especially because there's such good potential action that could unfold with these males later. If nothing serious happens in terms of interactions and confrontations with this coalition and the other lions in the area, one thing that we can hope to see and hear is them roaring. And the fact that they roared this morning means that there's a strong likelihood that they could roar again this evening. They're not scared in this area. They're willing to voice themselves and let all the other lion know that they are here. And that's a very interesting move, and I was very surprised by that. When I heard the roars earlier this morning, I thought it must be the Birmingham boys or the Matimbas, and then when we found them, it was a very, very pleasant surprise. Oh, wonderful. That's a white-crested helmet shrike that Jean-Andre spotted. It was a brief glimpse of them, and it's just so thick in this little area where we are that it was difficult to see. But what I can do is pull out my book and get that ready and show you a little bit later a closer view of that bird. It's a very pretty little bird, and it's been quite a while since I've managed to show them to you, so it could be a new bird for some of your bird lists, for some of the newer viewers. I'm just going to get a hold of James quickly and give him a few more updates as to where I think these lion are. Just need to wait for the chatter on the Game Drive channel to calm down. Wait our turn. There we go. Go ahead, James. I would suggest walking north up Weaver's Nest from Savage's Track Elephant Skull, and trying to work out whether they go east or west off the road. They were heading south before that junction. So just giving James the scoop on what I think he should do in terms of following up on the tracks that we had of, in all likelihood, the 3 in Kahuma lioness earlier. And it's really tricky business tracking at the moment. The overcast weather doesn't help, and the fact that we've had these recent rains means the ground is solidified hugely compared to the dry and dusty conditions we were experiencing before the rains during our dry winter months. And our tracking is going to get harder and harder as the summer unfolds, and we've got a little bit lazy, and our eyes have got used to the easy tracking conditions, and now we need to start working on our skills again. Well, I've just got another interesting update, and this is from John, so thank you so much for sending this through. And John's mentioned that these 2 Selati males could have been pushed out by a coalition called the giraffe males, and that's a coalition of 5, or possibly 2 of the skybed males. Now, I've heard of the skybed coalition. Apparently there's 9 youngsters that have all teamed up together. They will in all likelihood disband into smaller portions and smaller coalitions, as 9 lions in one place doesn't really make sense. And often with the bigger coalitions, once they have established dominance in an area, they'll fragment into different kind of groups, and that way they can patrol this massive territory more effectively. So they're still business partners, but they need to split up because basically their land has got too big to patrol with all of them being together at the same time. Now, that's really interesting stuff. It's occurring north of us in the Manyeleti, and maybe these guys have just got too much pressure up there that they're being forced into this area where they stand a bigger chance, or they feel that maybe it's worth trying their luck here because there's too much competition further to the north. And that's certainly possible, and that will obviously have a big impact on now what happens with the Birmingham males. They've obviously also been chased from that same area, also the Manyeleti, and also come south in search of a safer area, or an area where they are more likely to establish a territory. And aren't we lucky that we've now got these extra 2 males coming in to really make the animals vie for this position? We've still got 2 males, the Madiba males, who could come back and try and reclaim their territory. The male's just popped his head up again. I'm just going to ask Ephraim to tell his guests to keep their voice down, because they're making a little bit of a racket and I don't think they realize how close they are. If you could please ask your Mlungus to keep their voices down. There's Ngala Chava. And I don't blame them though. The excitement of seeing lions for the first time must really get their hearts pumping, and they obviously realize they're getting closer to the action here. So while we wait for these lions to start showing us a little bit more action and movement, we are going to run through many of the likely theories or outcomes of what may happen. And Kelly is now interested to know if this is in fact the 2 Madiba males, and they joined up with the older 2 males that we usually see here, what would happen with the lioness prides? What would they do? Would they remain split up, or would they join up together? And it's a tricky one to say, Kelly, but I would assume that the lioness will do whatever they would have been planning to do, regardless of what the males are doing in the area. The males will obviously have an impact whilst establishing the territory, and that could cause some prides to split up. But it's more likely for me that the lioness will only split up when they are having domestic issues between their own pride members, and whether it's 2 males or 4 males that are dominant over their area, I don't think it's going to impact hugely on their plans and movements. And the reason for that is that only 1 male out of a coalition will get to do the mating, and therefore I think it's not likely that we expect huge changes in the pride dynamics as these males, if they are the Madimbas, join up and re-establish dominance in this area. It's very tricky to tell though, and each pride takeover and coalition takeover, even if research has been done throughout Africa on many different prides, which it has, the scenarios and outcomes will always be different. And even though there may be general trends, it's not to say that that is the way it will play out time after time. Beautiful shot of his paw there, and you can clearly see those 3 lobes. Now, I touched on the fact that these lions are a little bit nervous, or at least one of the 2 of them are. And it's not the one that's closer to us. When we actually arrived here, the one that's a little bit more nervous got up and lay a few meters away in the thick bush. And Joyce is interested to know, why would they be nervous but still be happy to scent mark and vocalize this morning? And I touched on this morning, Joyce. Basically, they are nervous of us as humans, but they are not nervous of the other lions in this area. So it's 2 different things that we are kind of explaining here, or discussing their nerves of us as humans and these open vehicles versus their fear of other lion in the area. And they're clearly a lot more bold with regards to their thoughts of the other lion as they are compared to us, and that's why we've seen them a little bit nervous of us. And the reason for that is quite simple, Joyce. We've been hugely spoilt in this area, and that goes for the Sabi Sands as an entirety and other wilderness destinations in Africa. Basically, because people have been coming here for many, many years, taking photographic safaris, not hunting, not harming the animals, over time, parents have been habituated and shown by the humans that we don't pose any threat to these animals. And then they pass on these relaxed and habituated tendencies to young cubs. And as cubs are born and are tiny little furballs, we will continue to view them, and they will, again, become relaxed with us, and that will get passed from generation to generation. In other areas of Africa, not far from here in the Manyeleti Reserve, the road network is not nearly as dense as it is here in the Sabi Sands. So animals can escape humans for days on end, weeks on end, months on end, and therefore not have that habituation process. Even though there are the odd game drive vehicle driving around there, they don't spend nearly as much time as the animals as we do here in the Sabi Sands. And that is why we are seeing this slightly different behavior. I quite like it, actually, and it was a very pleasant surprise to see some very nervous lions this morning. When we got that first view of him, I was really concerned that he may charge the vehicle, but thankfully we stopped further enough away that he did feel safe, but he had himself flattened in the grass, staring very intently through us. So we can put that down simply to habituation. And basically, just to sum things up, if you went into a wilderness area in Africa where lions had never seen humans before, and you either walked up to that lion or drove up to it, it would run for its life probably before you even got to see the thing. So typically, the wilder the lion is, the less likely it is to allow you to get close to it in a vehicle and or even on foot. And Sarah in Ohio has also touched on that question, and she's now pointed out something a little bit different, and that is that one male is a little bit nervous and the other isn't. And I should have touched on that, so thank you very much, Sarah, for reminding me to do so by sending your question through. And again, just like humans, animals are different, and maybe one of these lions is just a little bit more nervous than the other. We're not sure what could have caused that, but what we can do is we can think of Kunyuma and Quarantine, 2 male leopards who are brothers. They would have in all likelihood been exposed to exactly the same behavior from us as humans. Yet Quarantine appeared to be far more relaxed in general than Kunyuma. So 2 brothers of the same age, the same litter, exposed to the same thing day in and day out, yet very apparent and notable differences in their personalities, you could say. And I think that's what can be attributed to this male's slightly nervous behavior. Not the one we're looking at, his friend who's hiding in the thick bush. like I said a bit earlier, a great shot of this individual's back pad of his paw. And often we explain to you that the cats will have 3 lobes on their back pad, and you can see very clearly there the 3 individual bumps at the base of that pad, and that will be applicable to leopard, cheetah, all the cat-like animals, whereas the dogs and the hyenas will have only 2 lobes on that back pad. So when you are out tracking, that's something to look for. And I guess even if you take your dogs for a walk on the beach, you will clearly notice the 2 back pads. And some of you with cats, I'm sure, have got the little 3-lobed paw prints littered around your house every now and then. So I mentioned earlier, and maybe I didn't term it correctly, that these lions aren't scared of the Birmingham males, and that's not necessarily the case. And Janet in Idaho is interested to know my thoughts on why they wouldn't be scared or why they would be scared of them. The fact of them coming into this area, vocalizing and scent marking, tells me that they're willing to confront or test the area. They're not flying below the radar just hoping to find a buffalo to feed on and then slink out and just carry on existing like that. They want to come in here, test the waters. Now, whether they come across the Birmingham males, I mean, this will be the only way to find out. I reckon that is the only way to be sure we'll know whether they're going to run from them or whether they're going to attack them. But they are certainly, the one's just picked up his head, he's lifting it up into the wind, smelling the air intently. I wonder what he can smell. Oh, nice big yawn coming. So it's not necessarily that they aren't afraid or don't respect the Birmingham boys, but they're coming in here voicing their thoughts, and the only way to be sure of any of these theories that we hypothesize is actually just to wait and see, because we can never be sure what would happen, and on one day one of the coalitions may prove dominant, and on the next the others could have a lucky bout. James is also interested to know whether or not I think these guys are bigger and more powerful than the Birmingham males, and most certainly, James, I've touched on it a few times now, their manes are much larger than the Birmingham males, their bodies are bigger, they're older, more experienced, and not on the way out like the Madiba males. These guys are a little bit younger and are probably going to be willing to put up more of a fight against them. Obviously, numbers are stacked heavily in the Birmingham boys' favor, 5 against 2. But experience plays a big role out here, and also the size of their mane, because when they do get into a fight, these guys are going to have a lot better protection than the Birmingham males. And you may find that the blows being delivered by the Birmingham boys into these very big manes are going to be less effective as the blows that these boys could deliver to the Birmingham males. So it'll be interesting to see, and I hope we are in the right place at the right time to capture any interaction between these 2 males and the Birminghams, or any lion that they may come across, because that will be the ultimate answer to a lot of questions that we have been asking. Another thing that we haven't touched on yet this afternoon, I did touch on it briefly this morning though, is where their name would have originated from. And I'm not entirely sure. It's one of two places. There's a Selati river, which could be the case, or the Selati railway line, which is actually south of us in the Sabi Sands. So I'm not entirely sure exactly what the causes of them getting their name or who actually named them. A lot of the time the names are merely to help people differentiate different lion, and depending on the area they may have got a name because of the area that they moved in, or simply because of something to describe their habits or personalities, whether they're very aggressive or like a security force is one of the words, which is the Majingi Lions, which I think is a word that basically means a security or an army, basically. So whether it's the name of an area that they spend time in, or something to do with their position or boldness or status, is kind of depends on the area where they get named. So I'm not too sure, and I'm not actually sure where they originated from. They have come from the north now, but where they were born, I don't have a clue. Well, I'm glad Itch from Pretoria is watching, because he has just brought up a good point, and he's suggesting that after the heavy rainfall we've got, possibly the scent of the other lions in this area, namely the Birmingham males, the Matimbas, the Nkuhumas, may have been washed away, and therefore these lions feel that they are in a safe area. I think it would certainly have an effect on how powerful the scent marks of the Birmingham males would be, but judging by their behavior this morning, the way this male we're looking at now sniffed up into a guarri bush and then scent marked on it, indicates to me that he was actually picking up old scent of other lion, and then he scent marked on top of that. So I'm fairly convinced that they can still pick up the scent mark of the other lion, but it is a very good theory. You can see the other male, he's also got his head up there, and yawning is a very good sign. I don't want to make a premature call here and say that they are going to get up and moving shortly, but yawning is a wonderful, wonderful indicator for us that they may be thinking about starting to move. Craig, where are you with that sighting? Copy, thanks, and confirm it's just 3 of them there. Copy, how far in? Okay, copy, thanks very much. Okay, well, some interesting news. The Nkuhuma Pride have been found, or at least 3 of them. They are to the east of us on Torchwood, and they are snacking on a warthog. So, unlucky warthog, but lucky lions. And those yawns that we saw earlier were an indicator that he was going to move. Sadly, not that far though, and just a little bit closer to the coalition partner. And it's great that we are spending a lot of time here because we want them to get as relaxed with us as possible. And even though they are older lions, they still can be habituated, and it's by sitting patiently with them that will help relax them with the vehicles. So back of an impact on their ability to fight, but I don't think this individual's injury on its paw, it seems higher up, disabled compared to, but that's not to say that he can't hold his own. If he couldn't hold his own, he wouldn't still be around now. And that's kind of the bottom line, I guess, with a lot of the animals. If you see them up and around and moving, even with a slight limp, they can still operate, they can still run quickly, they can still fight and fend for themselves. But of course, it's not going to be as well as an individual that doesn't have any injuries. So the extent to which I think he will not have power or be disadvantaged when fighting is hard to say, because we've hardly spent any time with him. But the injury isn't on his actual paw, it seems higher up, something possibly to do with his spine or something on the discs in his spine, maybe that kind of a pinched nerve that's creating a lack of blood flow and oxygen to that back left leg. I'm guessing that's a kind of likely injury that he may have picked up, either maybe hunting buffalo or fighting with other lions. When lions do fight with one another, they, interestingly enough, often bite the rear end just above the spine, just above the tail, to try and paralyze their opponents. It's not that, it doesn't make sense to spend too much time around the throat and neck because there's sharp teeth and paws that can fling forward there. So lions will, once they've pinned down one of their opponents, will often attack just above the tail and bite into the spine there. So he could have acquired that injury years ago when he was still a youngster establishing his territory, or who knows, maybe he picked up this injury fairly recently with the pressure that they've been getting from the other males up in the north of the Manuleti. So I wonder what James is up to. I haven't heard any updates on the radio from him for a while, so let me get a hold of him and see if he is still alive. James for Scott. Are you okay out there? What's happening? Well, he said he's okay. That's all I got out of him. So I hope he's having a good afternoon. I'm not sure where he's looking or what he's looking for. For those of you who weren't on the sunrise safari, Madiba was around, a young male leopard. So hopefully he'll pop up and James will be able to sneak you guys in there for a visit. This morning he was perched high up on a termite mound, and apparently all that could be seen were the tips of his ears and a little bit of his forehead. So not the best visual, but at least they knew where he was, and that should make finding him this afternoon a bit easier. Well, happy to hear that a lot of you agree that these are incredibly beautiful and majestic lions. Kathy and Andre and a few others have mentioned that they've never seen lions with manes quite this dark, and they are wondering whether it's attributed to age or genetics, and it's attributed to both. You will get old male lions with very small manes or very blonde manes, and others with very dark manes, but you don't ever get a very young lion with a big mane. So it's a combination of age, and generally manes start to develop at around 3 years of age, where you can really start to see them coming up as little mohawks, and anywhere from 5 years of age it'll be a full beard but not very long, and thereafter between 6, 7, 8 years old, like these males, they come into their prime. Anywhere older, 9, 10, 11, 12, you're going to start declining in strength and quality of any male lion generally, although their mane still could be quite big and shaggy at that age, but their bodies will start losing condition as they get a little bit older. So it's definitely fair to say that these lions have got great genetics in terms of having dark manes and dark coats. But it's hard to say exactly whether it's the direct genetics that have caused this, or a combination of good feeding and good upbringing. That will obviously also have a big impact on their current state and condition. And judging by their looks, they are in very good condition, so have probably been living a very healthy lifestyle. They don't also seem to be too scarred and battered, which I'm surprised about, but that may change in the coming weeks. Well, we've established that they're certainly big males, but Remay would like to know, how much do I think they weigh? And I don't have a clue, Remay. I've never seen a male lion being weighed, so I've got nothing to really go on other than the ages they get, or the sizes they give us in textbooks. And I would guess that they could weigh anywhere from 200 kilos upwards, so 400-pound animal, bigger than that, actually probably 440 pounds. but 200 kilos would be a kind of average weight of a big male lion. But they could be 20 kilos bigger than that or 20 kilos smaller than that. The only way to find out would be to weigh them, or to be around when one male lion is actually weighed, when they're doing some research on it, and then that would at least have something to go on for future measurements. But I've never been around in a scenario like that, so it would be impossible for me to make any kind of a calculated decision. Well, good news, James has found you guys some animals, so we're going to stay right here and hope that these males get active. But for now, you're going to jump across to James and see what he's got to find, or what he's found you.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jigger. I've been driving around here like a headless chicken, clueless as to where the tracks are going. We've had some buffalo tracks here, we've had various reports of Madiba just to the north of us. The radio has been exploding in my ear, and basically I feel like taking a long drink and lying down under a tree. Obviously I'm not going to do that. We are going to try and find these buffalo. And if we don't find them, then we will go towards where Madiba was last seen. I believe the lions are now fast asleep, which of course is the thing that lions do best. Now, I've read a fascinating thing the other day, that there is one animal, well, there are probably a few, but not many, animal that sleeps more than a lion does, and that is the koala bear. The koala bear is able to be awake for only 2 hours of every day. The rest of the time it is fast asleep. So, not even our lions are that lazy. Now, I believe you were discussing how much you think those fellows weigh. I unfortunately haven't seen them in the flesh. I've seen the pictures, and I would say, you know, the average male lion around here, 180 to 200 kilograms, about 440 pounds at the big size, ranging from about 380 to 440 pounds. So they would probably be around about the average size, I think. I don't think they're necessarily particularly large ones. Anyway, so you can see as we drive along here evidence of buffalo, and by evidence I mean their dung all over the place. Their tracks are heading that way and that way, but I don't know where they are now. I was expecting to arrive here and be surrounded by them, but I have not been so far. So what we're going to do is just stop here and have a listen. I'm going to pull the earpiece out of my head so that the speaking on the Game Drive channel, oh, it's gone away, it's merciful. That's wonderful. Let us listen to nature briefly. They should be off in here somewhere. And there is nothing but a deathly silence, other than for the rattling or whistling of the wind. Okay, chaps, I think we're going to give up on these buffalo, not because I don't think we'll find them, but I think what we're going to do is head towards that leopard. He's not too far from here, and I think he's going into some thick stuff, and the other vehicles with him are those big cars, and I don't think they'll be able to keep up with him like we will in that little Jigger. So let's go there and see if we can't get a space. Well, mainly because I think it's going to be a little bit easier. I'm not sure where these buffalo have gone. Taxon coming. Just going to get an update on the radio. Station in control of Madiba sighting. Copy, thanks. Confirm on Impala Road. Okay, he's just up here, everyone. I think he's wandering around, having a look and to see what he can find. This is around where he was yesterday, of course. Aye. Done. Okay, live alive. That was Taxon, everyone. Now the leopard's just up here, and Rochelle, I believe you want to know how many lions and leopards there are in the area. It's not an easy question to answer, but there are roughly a territorial female lion every 15 square kilometers or so, and you can sort of divide that by 3 to get the number of territorial males, and then if you average off the females that they have, and they're probably not too far off, say an average of 1 each at any one time, a couple of nomadic males, and that gives you an idea for this area. Here he is, he's in here. That'll give you an idea for this area what they are. And lions in this area is a bit easy to know because we know that how many there are in the Nkuhuma Pride. Now, Rochelle, I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you about the lions I know. You can count them. I don't have enough fingers and toes, so I will tell you who they are, and you can count them. We've got 5 Nkuhuma lionesses, 1 Nkuhuma male. We've got 2 Selati males, 2 Machapiri males, 4 Majingalana males, 4 always males, 2 did I say Selati males? No, 2 Sparta males. Then we've got 3 Styx Pride females. We've got, what else have we got? 3 Styx Pride females, 1 Styx Pride cub, and then I think there are 13 in the Mungan Pride. Now this is all to the south of us, of course, and another couple or another 4 in the Sparta Pride. Salala Pride's got 3. So that in the immediate area gives you a rough idea of how many lions there are. Now where is this leopard? Okay, he's just round the corner here. Found himself a little termite mound. See that, Brian? He's on a little termite mound. Brian, I think you're going to try and film through this gap if you can. Is that alright? How's that? Okay, everybody, I don't know if you can see the leopard yet, but he's sitting on a little termite mound just straight in front of where the camera is. There he is. Magnificent little fellow. He's come down off the tower that he was on this morning and found something slightly less impressive, but he's obviously completely hidden in here, and I believe he was trying to chase a snake when they found him. History doesn't relate what happened to the serpent, but he now seems to be fast asleep. Now, as I've said many times before, and I know for Scott it's a favourite thing of his to do, stopping to listen is an excellent way of finding animals. And so just to be here and spend a bit of time in the silence, trying to listen to perhaps the belch of a buffalo further to the south, the grunt of a lion maybe following them. We don't know where Junior is at the moment, and the other 2 Nkuhuma lionesses, we don't know where they are. I'll say, very kind of him not to get up and do something entertaining, but we'll just wait with him for a little while and see what he does, because I know that he has just started to move. And on a chilly day like today, if he's a little bit hungry, he'll move around quite a lot to find himself a little snack to eat. Alternatively, he could just sleep here for the next 4 hours. I do think it's hilarious that he is lying, I don't know if you can see it there, but he is as
for perhaps you're a new viewer, he does like to lie on termite mounds, he and his mother. And even though it doesn't look like it there, he's on a small termite mound. And this morning we found him on a huge towering termite mound about 3.5 to 4 meters off the ground. It was an enormous thing. And he's come down into this thicket, I suspect, you know, to try and get away from the wind. So just to recap, for those of you who perhaps just joined us, Scott is still sitting with those two, what we think are the Selati males, and what many of you who have been watching for a long time and paying attention to the social media updates of various wildlife in this area, you have correctly, I think, identified them as the Selati males. So they are two males that are around this area, and interestingly they were marking this morning, which is amazing behavior, especially in a territorial takeover, where the Birmingham boys are a threat to just about everyone here simply by weight of numbers. Then the 3 Nkuhuma lionesses who were harassing the buffalo herd around here yesterday, they are on Torchwood, which is to the east of us, and they have managed to find themselves a roast pork Sunday dinner. They didn't actually roast it at all, but it is definitely pork, and that's what they are busy happily doing on Torchwood to the east of us now. So that's the lion update. We don't know where Junior, the 3.5-year-old male of the Nkuhuma Pride, and the other females are at this stage, but they will be probably around here, we think. Now, Jill in England, we've just been giving a bit of a lion update, and you want to know, were the lions successful yesterday with their kill? Jill, I think it's highly unlikely. They'd be greedier than any lion I'd ever seen if they were if they had eaten a buffalo last night and now they were having a roast pork dinner on Torchwood. By pork, of course, I do mean warthog. I don't mean any other kind of pig. But no, Jill, I think you'll find that they were probably unsuccessful, and I think the reason for that you'll find, because the conditions were perfect. It was windy, there was a grey cloud all over the place, really good hunting conditions if you happen to be a lion, and not great if you're trying to defend a buffalo herd, but there are only 3 lionesses, and I think that definitely would have made a big difference to their success chances. They would have tried it on, probably. I think that for 3 lionesses, though, a buffalo herd is going to be a bit too much of a stretch. Normally, of course, when they do hunt buffalo, they do have the male with them, that young male, 3.5 years. He is, I mean, he's big, substantially stronger than the females, and they've also had 2 or 3 other females with them until the Birminghams decided that the something or other incurred their displeasure, and they killed off 2 or 3 of them. In fact, they've killed all 4 so far. So we have 2 flat cat sightings, but I think we're going to just sit here a little bit longer and see if things don't develop. Julia in Houston, you reckon you're seeing some sort of a swelling on his leg. I'm going to have a look with my powerful binoculars. Let me just retrieve them from their cover. Exceptional pair of binoculars that I have. We're just going to have a quick look and see. You say, is it possible that he was perhaps bitten by the snake? Julia, I definitely don't see any swelling. I don't think he's swelling at all. I think that's just the incredible musculature in the front paws of a leopard. Yeah, so I don't think that's an issue. I don't think he was bitten by a snake. I've seen leopards tangling with black mambas before, and they're just so fast that it's highly unlikely that a snake would be able to get hold of him. Remember, these leopards don't take risks. They're not like lions and hyenas, which are much more risk takers, and wild dogs to a certain extent, because they live in groups. If a leopard gets injured, of course, that's the end of that. They will eventually starve to death or fall to predation when they get weak. So they can't afford to take a huge number of risks. It's difficult to see through this vast swathe of bush behind which he is lying. Now Diane and Jean, all the way from Los Angeles in the west coast of the United States, you are postulating that perhaps he likes to lie upon termite mounds because of the warmth that comes out of them. Now, for those of you who don't know what on earth Diane and Jean are talking about, what it is that there's a huge amount of metabolic heat produced in a termite mound, because if you have 1 million termite mounds all there engaging in various metabolic processes, so heat is formed. Now, I think that's quite a good guess, except that I don't think that there are termites in this particular mound. So were this an active termite mound with lots of steamy chimneys coming out of it, I'd say you were absolutely correct. But this one I think is pretty much inactive. But certainly some that, like that big tall one he was on today, maybe he was warming his nose over one of the chimneys that sprouts some of that beautiful metabolic heat from the termites. It's a lovely thing to stand on a cold morning over a termite mound and warm your hands over one of the chimneys. Once these other lot, you can hear the other vehicles moving. Once they've moved out, I think we will probably try and reposition. This little car is quite clever at getting into these areas, and we'll see if we can't get a slightly better look of this deeply sleeping cat. All around us, well, you can obviously of course hear the cars, but you won't hear much in the way of bird song. You can hear the wind blowing. There is a very sort of moist smell on the air. It's born of these heavy clouds scudding overhead. And we did have, like I say, quite a few spatterings of rain today. Right, Brian, what we're going to try and do is just sneak forward around the side there. Okay, I mean, sneak is a relative term, of course. We're probably going to make the same noise as the marching 22nd Welsh Regiment, give or take the old rev. Here we go. No, I made a mistake. Ephraim is not leaving. He's coming back in from the other side. But we are going to sneak slowly through here. You see how I'm sneaking, Brian? That's a terrible noise. I think I may be trying a little bit hard here. Don't worry, I'm okay. It's Brian you should worry about. The leopard is looking at me as though I'm stark raving insane. I don't blame him. Hello, fella. That's wonderful. Look at that wonderful little chap. Isn't he magnificent? Look at him contemplating life from the top of his little termite mound. I do wonder what on earth he thinks. He gets off his termite mound, someone spots him, and suddenly he's surrounded by vehicles for the rest of the afternoon. Now there's complete silence. Yeah, you probably heard somebody clicking as though they were trying to win the Grand National on horseback. That, of course, is not particularly becoming of a guest in the Kruger National Park. We'll try not to call the animals too much. And just a very interesting point being made, and I did make it this morning, and you know, we saw, and you will see later, weather allowing at the Fireside chat, you will see some footage of Sindile. I've done it again, Brian. Beat me over the head. Thank you. Mandela, not Mandela. I'll get back to you, everybody. I just need to compose myself. Right, this leopard's name is Madiba, not Mandela or Sindile. It is Madiba. Now, you will see some footage at the Fireside chat of Madiba and his mother Shadow. And Shadow, of course, was hissing at him. Now, I think there was a lot of conflict over the food that they were eating. But at the same time, what's interesting is that when we last saw him, which it was just around the Arathusa Dam, and he has moved an enormous distance without his mother. This is the furthest it would seem that he has moved without her. That's not to say that he's left her completely yet, but that kind of aggressive behavior between the two of them and the fact that he has moved this distance indicates that there is some sort of independence at play here, and that it's certainly very early for a young leopard like this to be trying to go independent. But maybe because his mother's pregnant, she might be pregnant, she's wanting to spend a little bit less time with him. And as we know, many of you know, we've been debating this for some time, it's possibly why she's lost so many litters of cubs before young Madiba. So quite interesting, the distance that he has moved in the last little while. As the crow flies, and we had a wonderful, if slightly sardonic question about whether crows fly straighter than any other kind of bird this morning, which certainly made me chuckle. Thank you for that. As the crow or vulture flies from here, Madiba is about, I'd say, 3 kilometers from where we last saw him, which was 2 nights ago at Arathusa Waterhole. So, quite interesting.
I wouldn't stay here in the middle of these trees without Efra. He's dying.
We can leave you in the tree. You can sit in the tree wait. Just if you happen in the tree wait, and others can come in.
Now, Fiona, I believe you want to see his eyes. As you can see, they are fast asleep. But what you will notice, unlike with lions, we won't have to wait too long, I don't think, unless he has in fact been bitten by a snake, which I really don't think he has. He will lift his head and you will see his eyes, because leopards don't sleep soundly like lions do. So he will probably lift his head and open his eyes, and you'll see they're slightly tinged with blue. They're of course born with blue eyes, but they're now turning to the much more adult greeny, ambery yellow. I'm not sure if that's a real colour or not, Brian, but a greeny, ambery yellow with a tinge of blue seems to cover just about every possible colour that they could be. There you go, Fiona.
Right. And always like we find it like getting how to track it. The way it's used to people is not worrying.
Isn't he magnificent? Still got a very baby face about him though. Yes, he's very relaxed.
The way I'm scared of hiding. Everybody find the number.
Of course, quite a lot of chatter from the other game drive vehicle. People become extremely excited when they see a magnificent cat like this.
Very sharp.
Now, a very nice question from wee Gracie in Ohio, aged just 8 years. Gracie, you always have very good questions, so thank you for your question. Your question is, does the noise of the people speaking bother him? Gracie, if they were shouting and laughing, I think it probably would bother him a bit, but you can see that he's still sleeping very happily, so I don't think he's being bothered too much by it, no. It's just when you go into the wild, Gracie, you must just remember that you do need to be as quiet as possible, because so much of the information that the wilderness has to teach us comes through our ears and through our noses and through just the feeling that the wilderness gives. And as soon as we start talking and make a noise, you lose that sense of communication that you can have with the wilderness. So I always find to sit in the wild with an animal like this and be as quiet as possible is the best way to experience it. Some people clearly don't agree, but that's what I think. So Gracie, you've just heard a grey hornbill flying over. And of course, if you were making a big noise, you wouldn't hear that. And that's some of the beauty of the wild, that we can look at a wonderful animal like this and listen to the beautiful birds flying over and calling, singing their wonderful songs. So I think everybody, if you're happy, I think we're still going to stay with him for a little while. I think just because A, he's so magnificent, and B, because he might move. But I'm going to put it out to you that if you would like for me to go and look for the buffalo herd, hashtag Safari Live, questions at wildearth.tv, just write buffalo or leopard, and that will decide what I am going to do. You are, after all, my guests, and my wish, your wish, to a certain extent, is my command. So should you wish to carry on and look for the buffalo, I'm happy to do that. Just let us know. Remember, you are on a live safari, so what you say now, I will receive probably 30 or 40 seconds after you send it through, and I'm more than happy to do what you would like me to do.
Yeah, sometimes, like if the small workshop is nothing, you can finish everything.
And we had a lovely question the other day about why it is that his head has got smaller spots than his back. Now, I don't know why that is, and I've been thinking about it ever since the question was asked, and frankly, I have no idea, other than to say that it probably has to do with the fact that that's the front end of him, and so I don't know. I'm not sure why that would affect it, but perhaps bigger spots on his face would just look odd.
No, nothing. We didn't hear anything.
And there you can see his eyes beautifully now. Fiona.
That chicken is moving a lot.
He's watching a quite astonishing vehicle try and make its way in here. It's got a roof on it, so I think it might lose that roof on its way in,
Yes, the way that is,
which would be quite amusing.
that's it. You can see Peter. Peter is scared for everything that.
That's what he's looking at here. So, quite unsurprisingly, the Twitterverse has decided that instead of going off to look for what are essentially a huge number of cows, we are going to stay here and observe this magnificent golden, black and white cat as he watches us, thinking, good heavens, how does one get some peace around here? It is amazing how used to us they become.
Do they respond to that much?
No. Not.
Good if they ever do respond.
Oh, look at him.
Yeah. We knew
And
that was gonna
I must just, for those of you perhaps new viewers and wondering why I named him, basically 3 names that were incorrect. He was named recently, and this only happens when they reach about a year old, by the ranger and tracker that found him. Now they chose to call him Madiba, which is the clan name of Nelson Mandela, our father, basically the father of our democratic nation in South Africa. Before that, the Twitterverse had already named him Sindile, which I thought was a rather marvellous name. Still don't know what it means. Can't find any Shangaan or Zulu words that are exactly like that, but it was a lovely name, I thought. Anyway, and I'm really struggling to get used to the difference. And so I keep calling him Nelson or Mandela or Xhosa or Sindile, and basically I just never get it right. I'm sorry about that, but Madiba it is, and Madiba it shall remain, with any luck.
Hello. I'm fine, thank you. And then this side over you can see the back. Only tail.
Hi, boy. Now, quite apart from just knocking about this place and enjoying looking at the animals, part of what goes on in the Sabi Sands, which is a 60,000 hectare piece of the western Greater Kruger National Park, where we are sitting on a small piece of, quite apart from the viewing of and enjoyment of animals, we also do quite a lot of research. There are researchers around the place, and one of the things we've had to do is collect dung from leopards, which is it's a distasteful activity because it has to be fresh, and that is then being sent off to a group called Panthera, and they do amazing lion and leopard research. And we collected some of this dung the other day, Brent's collected some, I've collected some, and we've sent it off. And Michelle in Ohio, you'd like to know if any results have come back, and no, they haven't come back yet. I think it does take a little while. Now, the reason we're doing this, and I think it's fascinating, is that we're trying to confirm patriarchal lines. So we want to know who his father is. We're all pretty sure that it's Tingana. He's been seen eating at a kill with Tingana in shadow. He has lived ostensibly in Tingana's territory his whole life, and so we think it is probably Tingana that's his father. But what is interesting is that his mother will have mated with, or she did mate with, more than one male before he was born, and she's done the same thing again now in her current estrus cycle. This is not uncommon for leopards. Now, of course, the major killer of young leopards is infanticide, and one of the ways throughout the mammal world that this infanticide is avoided is by females basically conning males, territorial males, into believing that they are the father of specific offspring. And so what we want to do is to check whether or not he is indeed Tingana's son. He might be Anderson's son, he might be Mvula's son, we're not really sure. Well, we think he's Tingana's son. So that's why we're doing the scat collection, and will be fascinating to know. I don't think anyone's managed to collect any of Tingana's scat yet, or Anderson's, but I'm not sure. So that's what as soon as we have any results, Michelle, we will be sure to tell you, because I can't wait to hear them. The other thing that is interesting is that some species, especially species like cheetah, for example, exhibit what we call multi-paternity, which means that the cubs in a litter can have different fathers. So that's quite interesting. We don't know if it happens with leopards. We're pretty sure it doesn't happen with lions, but we don't know for sure. Look at that little fellow. Isn't he lovely? Oh, he's moved very far now. That was high action. Brian, how did you keep up?
Yeah, he fell off the back of the vehicle.
Oh no. Well done. You can see he's cold, just like your house cat or your dog. They curl up when they get a little bit cold. Not easy for a cameraman like Brian to keep up with action like that, and you can see he's highly experienced. Managed to zoom out the full 30 centimeters required without a single loss of focus. It was quite a remarkable feat. Well done, Brian.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
Lindsay, we're looking now at this beautiful leopard's fur, and you want to know what it feels like. Lindsay, I'm comfortable in telling you I have no idea, because thankfully I've never been close enough to a leopard to reach out and tickle it behind the back of the ears. I have, however, been around dead lions, and I would imagine that the fur is quite similar feeling. It's quite coarse. I think probably less coarse on a leopard. Quite coarse, but yeah, I mean, you would imagine keeping them very warm. So think about a dog like a short-haired large dog, like a ridgeback, for example. A ridgeback, for those of you who don't know, is a sort of African breed that comes from Zimbabwe originally, and a ridgeback has got short hair, and I think feels probably quite similar to that on the back of this leopard. But on his stomach, of course, he's got that lovely, luxuriant black and white fur, which I think probably feels very comfortable. And sometimes when we've been sitting with him and it's been a hot day or a soporific day, I felt like getting out and going and laying my head on his belly. I don't think that would have been a particularly clever idea. What remains of my hair would almost certainly have been removed by his claws. Lindsay, I hope that answers your question. I'm not entirely sure what it would feel like. But It does look very soft on his belly, I must say. So there we're looking in at his face with its little spots and his back with his large spots. And Carol in Atlanta, very good postulation that perhaps the spots on his face look more like pupils and help to disguise his eyes more than perhaps the larger spots. Carol, it could well be. I really couldn't tell you, but yeah, it could well be. Maybe that's why. I will keep thinking about it. One day I shall have a eureka moment, probably years after I've stopped working or presenting for WildEarth. When I'm an old man, I'll be doddering along a shopping centre one day on a walker, and it will come to me. He is a remarkable creature. And a comment from Maggie that he might be looking hungry. Maggie, I don't think so. I haven't seen his belly, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But I've yet to see this leopard looking hungry, and I'm not sure. Oh, look, it's possible. It's possible that he's a little peckish after a couple of days without eating. But Maggie, I don't think he's certainly not looking emaciated by any stretch of the imagination. And without seeing his belly, I don't think it would be possible to say for sure. Now, what is interesting with these cats, of course, is that when they are hungry, they're thin. And when they are not hungry, they're fat. And that's because of the diet that they have. They don't lay down fat. And so when their bellies are full and they're digesting, they're not hungry. They're only in sort of extreme circumstances will they start to lose mass, muscle mass, because the body is then digesting muscle, which would be an unusual and very stressful thing for them to occur for them. Ellen in Arkansas, very nice comment about the fact that you think that the young Madiba here is quite relaxed around the WildEarth vehicles. Yes, I suppose he is, you know, and I think it's a function of, well, first of all, we do try and be sensitive with him, and he spotted something. But we also, Ellen, make a big effort we do sit a long time with them. A lot of these other vehicles come in and out because they've got guests who are only here for 2 nights or 3 nights, and they need to see as much as possible, as quickly as possible. We have the luxury of time with these animals, and so absolutely, I think they get used to our voices, and they get used to our voices, and they get used to our ways. And so he possibly is a little bit more relaxed around us than he would be around some of the other vehicles, but he's very relaxed anyway. So thanks, Ellen, for that. He does, you say you thought he was following Brent the other day as he was driving through the bush. Well, Brent is a fascinating character, so you know, I wouldn't blame old Madiba here following him through the bush, probably trying to find out what he was going to say next. Just see what he's looking at. Brian, are you ready? High action about to take place. He may move another 30 centimeters to the left. we're going to stay here with him. And while he is starting to, his eyes are starting to droop again, look at them going there. We're going to head back across to Scott, who's still with those two magnificent male lions. I think they're doing much the same as this cat is right now, but let's get an update from him. We'll stay here and keep you updated and bring you back as soon as anything develops over here. Bye bye, and see you just now.
Welcome back, everyone, and how lucky are we to have such awesome cat sightings this afternoon. For now, though, the views of these two male lions are not the best. It will certainly change at some point, though, and we're going to hang around for as long as it takes to get some action out of them. Interestingly enough, Brent has taken a closer look at a lot of your screenshots of these animals from this morning, and he is convinced that they are not the Selati males. So I know it's a big debate at the moment between a lot of the viewers as to who everybody thinks these lions are, and I just thought I would throw Brent's opinion into the equation just to get everyone thinking. He's convinced that the Selati males aren't as in good a condition as these males. They've got a lot more scars, and especially one of the males that he photographed at a very big dam in the Manyeleti, probably about 15 to 20 miles away from where we are here, and he photographed them there, and they had very distinctive, or at least one of them had a very distinctive scar over its. If any of you have noticed, but the male and who. Let's take a closer look to show you exactly the view we've got. There's been a little bit of yawning and stretching, but not as much as I would have hoped for. So possibly still another half an hour or so before they start showing signs of getting up. But in my history with spending time with lions, even if it's with the same pride, their behavior changes from day to day, and they could get up with no warning and start moving at any point, so that would be first prize. Ideally, a big old buffalo bull would come walking past. That would certainly get their attention. But I haven't heard any oxpeckers in the surrounding area, so I don't think there are any buffalo around. And the other vehicles that have been driving around have yet to call in any buffalo sightings nearby. Interestingly, I've heard a little bit more conversation about the 3 Nkuhuma lioness east of us who are on a warthog kill, and it sounds like from the tracks around where they've killed this warthog is that they actually dug it out of its burrow. Imagine what a terrifying scenario that must be, to be a warthog with these lions slowly but surely digging into your burrow. Texans seem to think, though, that they could have stolen it from a leopard, so varying views from the different guides that have gone across there to have a look. But at least those 3 lionesses from the Nkuhuma pride are going to be well fed, and it's going to be very interesting to see how long it takes for the other members of their pride to relocate them. They are currently, I'm not too sure if they have been found on Arathusa or Sibambili, the other 3, including Junior, the young male. But these 3 lionesses with the warthog kill have headed further away from the last position that Junior and the other 2 lionesses were seen. So a reunion is not imminent, I don't think, unless of course Junior and the other 2 are somewhere on Djuma, just without anyone's knowledge of exactly where. Not too much in the way of bird song this afternoon just yet. There's a few francolin calling, but you tend to find cold and cloudy weather causes the birds to not be as vocal as bright sunshine. interestingly though, I can hear some scops owls, a small owl calling behind us, which you'll be able to pick up. And they usually call mainly at night time, but in the last week or so I've heard quite a few of them calling during the day, and I've chatted with Brent about it. He's desperate to try and find the first decent sighting of one during the daylight, so you can expect to see him chasing after those calls when he and Jamie are on drive tomorrow. And one thing that I didn't do earlier was show you guys the white-crested helmet shrike that fluttered through a bit earlier in on the show. So I've got it ready in the book here. And this is a page of wonderful birds. The brightly colored birds at the top are the bush shrikes, of which we get both here. There was one of the grey-headed bush shrikes sitting on my veranda before afternoon drive, so that was a great one to see. It's a lot bigger and more bulbous and robust than the smaller orange-breasted, but very similar coloration. But the one that we got a glimpse of was this one here. And they've got this funny little white crest, bright yellow eyes, and fly around in small family flocks. We also get their cousin, the Retz's helmet shrike, but not as common as the white-crested. Both beautiful birds though, and it's very important for us to appreciate the birds and the smaller things out here, not just the big majestic male lions, because most of the time these guys aren't around and the birds are. And I think a lot of the small animals have been kind of overlooked simply because they're small, and unless you get a close-up view of them, you wouldn't actually be able to appreciate their beauty. So just to recap for some of the newer viewers, I know Jen is interested to know how old they are, and they were born in 2007 apparently, if it is the Selati males, which Brent thinks it isn't. Either way though, regardless of who they are, judging by their looks, I think that their age could be 7, 8 or 9 years old. Anywhere in that bracket is probably where they are, and I'm judging that thoughts on a number of things: their body condition, their mane, the amounts of scars they have. They certainly don't look to be on the older side, like the Madiba males, who are battle scarred and notably a little bit older. These guys seem like they are in their prime, which would put them anywhere between kind of 7 and 9 years old. But it's a huge debate at the moment as to who exactly they are. Haven't got confirmation yet, and I think it will be a debate for possibly a few more days until we get enough solid evidence as to exactly who they are. Lions are difficult to identify, far more difficult than leopard, because they often look very similar to one another and don't have very distinctive spot patterns that can help distinguish one individual from another. And scars usually form the best way to identify the different individuals. Scars on the face. Also the size of the mane obviously has a big impact. These two have beautiful big manes that look, from what I've seen, quite similar to one another. So they could actually be brothers or possibly cousins from the same pride. So I think they come from a very similar genetic pool. And on manes and mane size, Stephanie in Switzerland would like to know how the genetics play a role in how the manes look on different lions, and she said, is it area specific? And she mentioned the black maned lions of the Kalahari. So yes, certainly, Stephanie, there are certain areas where stronger genes have become more prominent, and the black maned lions of the Kalahari are a good example of that. In this area, I've noticed a wide variety of different manes. Some very big, but blonde in color, not necessarily very dark. So a wide spectrum of different genes and manes occur in the Kruger National Park. Stephanie also touched on the white lions of the Timbavati. It's a very interesting genetic strain that occurs kind of in a lateral line from the Timbavati, but even deeper east into the Kruger, kind of east of Satara Camp towards a mountain range called the Lobombo Mountains, which is actually a very long mountain range that starts in KwaZulu-Natal, the province south of us, and stretches hundreds of kilometers up into Mozambique. Anyway, there's also a few white lions that occur naturally over there at a property where I used to work. And interestingly enough, there's currently a pride of 42 lions in that area called the Mountain Pride, and they have got 2 white lions. One is 6 months old and one is 1 year old. So that genetic strain is another example of how you will find certain genetics staying in a given area. But with the males of the Sabi Sands, I've seen all different shapes and sizes. The birds do seem to be increasing the tempo of their calls now. You can hear some hornbills. Kuruk, 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 kuruk. Well, like I said earlier, we're not going to go anywhere until these big males decide to do something. So we're going to send you back to James and Madiba, where hopefully there's a little bit more action unfolding.
Hello everybody, welcome back to young Madiba. There, I got it right, Brian. Madiba has not moved an inch since you last saw him. He has lifted his head, as that is as a function of the fact that he's just watched the only other game drive vehicle leave here. So as was pointed out to us just before we went off air to Scott to see the lions, they are relaxed around the WildEarth cars because we spend so much time with these young leopards. And with the older ones, of course, but this little fellow, especially over the last few weeks, we've been spending extended periods with, because he's been all around us and so confiding, allowing us to watch his basically his growing up. So if we were to let's try and gauge his age. We do like to anthropomorphize as human beings, and basically what that means, careful Brian, he's moving again, what that means is that we like to sort of identify with them by putting human characteristics and human behaviors and human emotions towards animals. And I think it's a perfectly natural thing to do. Sometimes it's not particularly, it doesn't give us a very accurate picture, but I quite like to do it sometimes just to get an idea, because obviously that helps us relate to animals. So he is now just over a year old, and what that means is he's basically becoming a teenager. So his testosterone levels will start to go up. He'll become slightly more willing to engage his mother and other animals in slightly more aggressive behavior. That'll be because of his testosterone. He will start to spend a bit more time on his own, and we can see now that he is moving further away from his mum. Let us not confuse this with him becoming independent yet, but certainly he will spend further time away from them. So if you think of a sort of 13-year-old boy, that's probably sitting at about what age in leopard years he happens to be now. Heidi, you are clearly a great leopard viewer and you want to know what his spot pattern is. Now, before I tell you, we can't actually see it, of course, because he has buried his head in that luxuriant fur on his belly. Heidi, his spot pattern is 3-3, and a spot pattern, everybody, is the unique spots that occur in a specific pattern above the whisker line on leopards. It doesn't occur so much in lions. You can, from lions' whisker patterns, tell individuals, but it's a very tedious process. It's not as quick and easy as it is with leopards. So if this leopard lifts his head, what you'll be able to see is 3 spots on the left of his nose and 3 spots on the right. And if I'm not mistaken, basically how you read it is for us left to right, and from him right to left, obviously. So he is a 3-3 spot pattern. Were he to have 4 on his left hand side, so our right hand side, as we looked at him, you'd call him a 3-4 male. He's a 3-3 male, and it's just quite a nice way of telling the difference between the different individuals, especially if you don't have very clued up identikits on them. So Heidi, that's what the spot pattern is. 3-3. Now, another lovely question from Peggy on email. And Peggy, you say his feet look huge. Now again, that's his stage of life. Just like a teenage boy will suddenly go from wearing children's shoes to fitting into his father's shoes, so a leopard cub like this has gone from having feet the same size as his mother's, and that was about a month ago. We couldn't tell the difference between the tracks. Now his feet are so obviously bigger, you can tell it's a young male now when you see his tracks on the ground, even if you haven't seen him making them. So Peggy, it's not an indication that he's going to be a particularly big male leopard. Again, our initial reaction to seeing a male is to ask immediately how big he's going to be. I don't think he's unusually large at all. For his size, I think he's pretty average sized. We'll only really tell his true size when he is about 4 or 5 years old. Then we'll be able to gauge whether he's bigger or smaller than average. Remember that the size differences out here, because of nature and the way things work, and because size is such a predicator of success out here, so the bigger you are, generally the more dominant and successful you are. And the little chaps like me, for example, in the animal world do not generally make it very successfully. And as Ramey has pointed out, and I pointed out when we got in here, he has still got his baby face. Ramey, I don't think he's on the edge of losing them, but certainly you're absolutely right. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen pictures of a big male leopard, but a big male leopard does not have the kind of inviting expression that this young leopard does on his face. A big male leopard is a pretty intimidating thing to see at this distance. They get a bit scarred, they get much thicker heads, their necks start to get much thicker, they have that kind of, I don't know how to describe it, there's a dewlap that hangs under their necks, and that makes them look a little bit sort of intimidating, I suppose. And he at the moment still looks very much in the flush of his youth, as it were. But Ramey, yep, enjoy those looks while they last. They ain't going to be there forever. We did see Quarantine recently, a 3-year-old male leopard, and he is he 3? He's 3 in December, I think. He turns 3 in December, and he doesn't have quite the intimidating look of Tingana or the Anderson male or Mvula yet, but certainly he doesn't have quite the baby face that this fellow does. So just getting back to that size discussion, if we look at let's look at Impala. Impala males are all similar sizes. Very few are noticeably smaller than others. Yes, absolutely, there will be a size difference. But if we look at human beings, the smallest male human being, without being sort of, what should we say, on the extremes, is probably weighs around 60 kilograms. And the largest male human being, if you think of some of those NFL players or rugby union players, will be up to 120 or 130 kilograms. I mean, that's 100% size difference in males. Leopards, of course, and lions and impala don't have anything like that size variation, except where they're separated by different regions, and then they do. And obviously, human beings separated by different regions tend to show similar patterns, but even within a region, human beings show much greater variation in weight. And that is because, of course, to succeed as a human being, you need a lot more than just your size. You need to have a brain that functions in a relatively useful way, and various other things. You need to be socially adept. That's obviously a huge thing for a human being, but for a leopard and a lion, your social adeptness and ability to make small talk at a cocktail party are not necessarily nearly as important as your size. And so a big male lion is in general going to do better than a little one. Huh. Did you like that, Brian? Yes. I thought. Right. Okay, everybody, we're going to say goodbye to young Madiba now. Oh, he's just giving us a bit of a yawn. I'm sorry, boy. I know you don't want to see us go, but you know, Fireside Chat does call. We're going to head away from him now, and there's high action at the lions. One of them has looked up. That's all he's done. So we're going to cross back over to Scott, and he will show you the action of the lion looking down the drainage line. Hopefully they'll get up and do something. I think he's going to stay with them while we're at the Fireside Chat, just to make sure, because they're such a special thing for us to have seen today. And we're going to make our way out of here towards quarantine clearings, and I will see you just now in the golden glow of the fire. Please send through your questions if you want to talk to us at the Fireside Chat. Get them in early. We'll be talking about lions and leopards, and actually anything else you want to talk about, perhaps the weather and anything else. Okay, bye-bye. See you just now.
Welcome back, everyone. And there's been a dramatic change in these lions' behavior. They heard something to the south. I'm not sure exactly what it was. The one male lifted up his head very quickly, looking south, and then the other male a few seconds later did exactly the same thing. Now, they stared south for a few moments and then started yawning and grooming themselves, which is a very clear sign that they are getting ready for the evening activity. And let's just all cross our fingers and hope that they don't go back to sleep, because sometimes they do after doing a little bit of grooming and showing some signs of life. But I'm confident that they are going to get up and moving shortly, and let's just hope that they move through an area that's not too tricky for us to follow them, because they are very close to a large riverbed with a lot of thick vegetation, which may make our lives tricky. Anyway, certainly very good prospects, and I'm so interested to know where they're going to head from here. And speaking of which direction they head in, Deb in Connecticut would like to know, how far are we away from the Juma Cam? Probably only about 300 to 400 meters, about a quarter of a mile, so not far at all. And there's another big yawn. Interestingly, the other male I did see yawn, and his bottom left canine is broken. It seems to be broken quite far down at the base and almost appears to not even be there. But I have been looking through very thick vegetation, so I haven't had a very clear view, but I can confirm that the other individual's bottom left canine is broken, which could mean that they are in fact the Selati males, which some of you believe. I mentioned earlier that Brent feels strongly otherwise. And surely all this yawning, all the oxygen they're taking into their systems is going to help energize them. And shortly after a few more yawns, I'm guessing that they're going to get up and start moving. There's another vehicle approaching, but we're in a very tight spot here in order to get you this view of the one individual. And we're very fortunate in our smaller cars, a short wheelbase vehicle that allows us to meander through this thick vegetation a little bit easier than the regular game viewers, which are considerably longer. You can just see the other male's snout on the top left of your screen there, but he's heavily obscured. I'm wondering if I should reverse just ever so slightly and try and get you a small gap so that if he can yawn, or if he does yawn again, you'll be able to see. So just see what happens here. Just stay on him, Jean-Marie, otherwise I'm not going to be able to. It's not going to work, but worth a try. Sorry about that little roller coaster forward. We are parked in a very funny spot. Okay, well, some interesting info on these two males, if they are in fact the Selati males, which they could well be, like I said, with the one missing its bottom left canine. And they were initially part of a coalition of 5 males, brothers born in slightly different eras, I think some in 2007, some in 2008. But like most large coalitions, they've disbanded into smaller groups. And what we can also read into is that they came from the Southern Pride, and they were fathered by the golf course males, which used to reign in the south of the Sabi Sands. And that does make sense in terms of where they got their name from, the Selati railway line that stretches from Johannesburg to Mozambique. And it's no longer active, but used to run through these wild areas. And they obviously spent a lot of time on that Selati railway line when they were first establishing themselves as a coalition. Come on, boys. Get up. There's a lot of people that are wanting to see just how big and majestic you are. I really would love to know what they heard. Possibly other lion audio to the south of us, possibly alarm calls, the rasp of the leopard. Those are the 3 main things that would probably get their attention. If lion hear intent alarm calls coming from any given area, they can often respond in the hope that they can chase off whatever animal has caused the animals to alarm call, especially if they would have made a kill. And because they are so much more in tune with the different noises that we hear out here than we are, they could possibly even tell the difference between alarm calls of impala that have just seen a leopard as opposed to impala alarm calls that have actually seen one of their herd members being caught. And even for us as humans, we can sometimes point out the difference, because impala and bushbuck and kudu will generally alarm call a lot more intently and for a lot longer period of time if in fact one of their herd members have been caught. And I'm sure a lot of the meals that these guys feed on have not necessarily been caught by themselves and have been caught by smaller, weaker carnivores that they can overpower and steal from. So just to fill you guys in on the plans for this evening, they're a little bit different to normal, and that is that James and Brent and Jamie are going to go ahead with the fireside chat. So please start sending through some questions to them. We're going to be playing you a few highlights of Shadow and Madiba, a female leopard and a basically 1-year-old male cub. And it's a really interesting sequence of the two of them hissing at one another, and it'll be interesting to see how their relationship develops over the coming months. And within the next 2.5 months, she could well give birth to new cubs, and that's obviously going to change dynamics greatly. So that's one of the clips we're going to be playing. Another one is of the interaction that Brent and Jamie got to see last night with the Nkuhuma Pride, those 3 lioness hunting buffalo. And a few clips of this morning of these newcomers into the area. So any questions relating to these guys, the Nkuhumas, or Shadow and Madiba, or anything that you would like to ask Brent or Jamie or James that is not necessarily pertinent to what we may be seeing or doing at any given time, but maybe about life behind the scenes here at Djuma. And Brent and James are heading off on leave soon, so it'll be the last time for you guys to sit around the fire with them. So bear that in mind. And I'm guessing James might pull out his trusty guitar to entertain you with again. Oh, what was that? Was that a little yawn? I mean, a little call starting. Is he going to start roaring? Imagine that. Please start roaring. Yes, he's calling softly. He's calling. This could ramp up very quickly into a full-scale roar. Come on. Well, he certainly was thinking about it, and if it doesn't happen in the next few minutes, I'm certain it will happen before the end of the show. Very happy to hear that one of our youngest viewers is watching the safari this afternoon, and that's Isabella. She's just 4 years old, and she would like to know if these lions are very sleepy. And Isabella, yes, they are, but just like when we wake up in the morning, we also might... Oh, here he goes. Another little call. But just like when we wake up in the morning, Isabella, it takes some time before we thinking clearly and moving at full speed. And this is kind of like the morning for the lion. Their day really starts at the opposite time to us. It's as darkness falls, and they're busy about to start almost a new day. So they've been sleeping all day and are still feeling a bit sleepy, but I think slowly we're going to start to see them a lot more lively and alert. And I'm hoping, like you've seen, he's just started doing 1 or 2 little calls, and let's just hope that he continues into a full-scale roar. It's been a long time since I've been nearby big male lions roaring, and it's something that I love to share with everyone. So we were chatting about the broken canine on the other individual that we can't see very clearly now a little bit earlier. And Gary's interested to know if there's anything the lions can do to help with pain relief if they do have a problem like that. And not that I'm aware of, Gary, but I think we need to remember that a lot of the animals are far more tough and resilient than us as humans. Our bodies have become weak and fairly ineffective as we've evolved, but our brains have grown, and the animals are kind of the opposite. Their brain power isn't quite as good as ours, but their physical power and capability of healing themselves without the help of doctors has remained very strong. And I've seen a number of lions with broken teeth and missing teeth, and it never seems to affect them too negatively. Now, one thing that they could have heard earlier to the south which has caught their attention may be the audio of the Birmingham Boys, the coalition of 5 young males. And Mavis has just sent through an interesting question asking, have they actually, the Birmingham Boys, ever been in a fight with other males? Because it's easy for 5 youngsters to bully the older, weaker Matimbas, but it's often the bullies who get taught a lesson when they come up against equal competition. And you're entirely correct, Mavis, I couldn't agree more. And no one's actually seen any physical confrontation where the Birminghams have got a hold of any other males or been in a full-blown battle with them. So there's no confirmation that that has in fact happened. I'm guessing it would have. But it will, like I say, be interesting to see what does unfold when these males do eventually have a clash, and we're around to share it with all of you. And I guess that would be first prize, but even if it does happen in a surrounding property where other guides get footage or photos and just a little bit more insight into how powerful or dominant either of these coalitions are. A lot of the time in wildlife and in nature, animals will think twice before getting into a full-blown confrontation, and a lot of the initial debates or arguments are over vocal wavelengths and not physical ones. So they'll vocally communicate and size one another up visually, pacing up and down next to one another, but not necessarily commit to a physical battle. And that could have been happening with the Birmingham Boys up till date, so maybe they haven't been in a full tussle yet. But that time is coming, it has to come. There's only so much arguing that can be done between the male lions before eventually a physical confrontation will settle the scores and work out who is in fact the dominant ones. Well, after all the signs of life they were showing earlier, the yawning, the grooming, a few very faint but audible calls coming from this male, they seem to have gone back a few steps and calmed back down. Interesting question through from Doug, and one that I haven't thought of yet, and that is whether or not any of the Mapocho coalition, it's a coalition that is no longer around. They were overthrown by the Majingaline coalition, which is to the south of us. And Doug would like to know if any of the Mapocho's offspring are dominant in any areas, or if any young males have survived and showing potential signs of becoming dominant. And not that I'm aware of. I've been out of that southern area of the Sabi Sounds for too long, Doug, so I'm not too sure. Oh, I thought I heard another call there. Let's take a closer look. Come on. It was either the end of the yawn, which I think it could have been, or that initial groan that they let off before they start calling very loudly. He's thinking about something here. It's almost that he wants to let out a roar, but he's thinking twice about it, and I don't blame him, because they are in a new territory that's unknown, but they were calling here at least once this morning, and also scent marking. But you can see him, he's almost holding himself back from letting out a roar. And I don't know how long he's going to be able to restrain himself. I don't know if my mind's playing tricks on me, or if I can hear other lions calling off in the distance. It's probably just my mind playing tricks on me, like I said. But he's listening very intently to the south and to the east, which is where the initial audio came from that got them up and yawning and cleaning themselves earlier. Come on. Another gentle call. This is better. This looks good. Come on. They have to. They're just warming up, I think, for the main show. And once the first one starts calling, the other one will join in, and it'll be a duet that we hear. I've very seldom seen two male lions together when only one calls. Oh. Well, it certainly got me sitting on the edge of my seat. And the other male's just got up and started moving. I wonder where he's going to go. He's moving through very thick bush though, but it looks like he could be heading in a good direction back up towards the Juma waterhole. I'm guessing he's going to take a short toilet break as that they usually do a few meters after getting up. But he is heading in a good direction for us, where we will hopefully be able to relocate them. As you can see, it's incredibly thick here, so we may lose visual of them temporarily, but the direction he's heading in is perfect for us, so that's good news. And I'm hoping he's going to pop into a little clearing now. No, he's going deep into some thick bush, but heading in a good direction for us to relocate on them a little bit later. He's somewhere in that grey blur. You can just faintly make out his mane. Look at how awesome that is. Well done, Jandre. Some very good camera work there. And wasn't that a spooky glimpse through the grey foreground? So he was the more nervous of the two males that got up initially, and the more relaxed one, who was the one that was actually the one doing the majority of those initial little calls, is still over here. So let's keep an eye on him, and hopefully he's going to call properly now. He incorporates a bit of a roar into his yawn there that he's just completed, and I think he's just about ready to let out a proper roar now. Come on. Just going to get on the radio quickly and explain to yours that it might be worth heading up to where the other one moved. Yours, did you see that other one moving off to the north? So a soft little call there, nothing full-blown, but certainly prospects are looking good, and I'm guessing he's going to follow the trail of where this other male has gone. There you can see this injury on the back left leg, and this is how we first saw him this morning. So it doesn't look good at all, but he's just going to stretch it out. And you'll notice as he continues to move a little bit more that that limp almost fades away into something very, very slight. And it's not uncommon for animals with injuries to really show that injury as they get active and start moving. But already you can see it's a little bit better. Yours, please let me know if you get that other one, because this individual is headed further down into the drainage. So, ever so slightly they have got different plans, but I'm guessing after this individual's toilet break, he will hopefully follow the other individual. Another call there. And it's going to take us a while to relocate them now. So I'm not sure if we maybe going to send you across to the Fireside chat for a quick update as to how they're doing there, or if you're going to stay with us. But either way, we've got really good options this evening. Fireside chat one side, and two male lions that have just got active over here. A steep bank we had to drop down into to get into a decent spot to view those lions. said they're heading north, or at least the one was, so hopefully up towards the Juma waterhole, which is where they were seen first this morning on the Juma waterhole camera. Just not copying any messages from Yorfs, the other vehicle in the sighting, so I'm going to keep trying him there. Yorfs. Just to let you know, the other one headed down into the drainage initially. Individuals just slunk off to our right here. We're going to keep creeping ahead and try and work out what they do. Thanks, Jos. It looks like he's going to meet up with the other individual. We will get a brief glimpse of him now, though, as he stares back at us. The other one's calling. I think this one's going to join in on the call. Well, would you believe it? Like I said earlier, I've never seen two male lions together where one calls and the other doesn't. But that's the beauty of being out here in nature. You often get proved wrong and surprised. And this is a classic example of that. I'm still at a loss of words for the fact that we didn't get this other male joining in. Torn as to what to do now. It's not going to be easy getting into the area they've just headed down to. So I'm thinking what we should do is head up onto the dam wall at the Juma waterhole and stand by for any further audio there. And depending on where we hear that audio, we'll get a better idea of exactly which direction they've decided to head in. And then we'll be able to plan our attack further from there. I think to try and race in here immediately wouldn't really make too much sense, because it's so thick that by the time we get to where they were roaring now, they could have already moved off into another area. At least we did get to hear a little bit of a roar. I'm sure you would have picked that up faintly. But let's hope we get a little bit closer by and both of them join in on the next call. They were both certainly calling this morning, that I can assure you. It wasn't just the one. You can quite easily hear when 2 or 3 or more individuals are calling. It can sometimes be a little bit tricky working out whether it's 3 or 4 or 5. Little scrub air running off along the road there. So now you'll get a good idea just how close both the Juma waterhole is, as well as the Juma camps, Vuyatela and Gallagher, which you can see lit up in the distance there. Okay, well, while we try and work out where the lions have gone, you guys are going to have the joy of sitting around a fire with James and Brent and Jamie and hearing some of their thoughts as to this new coalition that's on the property and the prospects that could be the future of the dominant lions in this area. We'll try and relocate them while you're gone and hopefully pull you back to some good action.
Good evening and welcome everybody to this an odd version of the Fireside Chat with Jamie, me, James, and Brent, of course, to the right, and Scott out in the field with those two magnificent male lions that we saw earlier today. We're going to wing this one by the seat of our pants, or in fact the spiky bits of wood sticking into our bottoms. We're not probably going to show you too many clips because we will be probably swapping to and from Scott as we go. Now, without further ado, we had a question from Jimelin, which I'm going to farm out to Jamie.
So, Jimelin, you were wondering how far Scott is from us with those lions. So, Jimelin, he is roughly between 350 to 450 meters in that direction. So we had a little bit of a disagreement as to exactly how far it would be, but they are very, very close. We can see Scott's lights, and we did hear them calling, or the one calling just a little bit earlier.
Wonderful sound, that. And then we had another question, Brent, from Tina.
Yes, hi Tina, thanks very much for your question. Tina's wondering a little bit more about the history of the Selati males, and I've actually fortunately saw them when they were still a coalition of 4 down on a property called Singita, where I was visiting a good friend of mine. And at that stage they were probably a little bit older than what the Birminghams are now, and were trying to establish territory in that area in the western sections of the Sabi Sands. And the Majinga lions did come in and have a big fight with them, and one of them was killed or died from the wounds suffered in that fight. I'm not sure how the other male was killed, but they then moved from that section through to the north, and I'm not quite sure with the Matimbas and what happened, but they ended up in the Manyaleti. Now these two males, I'm not convinced are the Selati males, and I know it's very, very difficult, but I've got photos of them from about 3 years ago, and then I've got photos from them about 2 months ago in the Manyaleti around where we were staying at the main dam. And the one male that I was told by the Tinswalu guides they were the Selati males has a very big scar right across his nose. Their manes are not nearly as impressive. They are a similar age, but I personally don't think these are Selati.
So what age would that put them at? You saw them at what age initially?
I'd probably say 5.5.
So that would put them at 7 now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they look to me like they could be around that age, so who knows? Perhaps that scarring's covered over slightly. Sandy in Indiana, you saw the one with the squaff leg. One of them is injured. He's limping quite badly on his left-hand hind leg, and you saw him scent marking. And Sandy, you're wondering if this is perhaps something that hurts him to scent mark. Sandy, I don't think so at all.
The lions are roaring.
You won't maybe be able to hear that.
This mic is very good.
Wonderful sound. Two calling now.
You can see Brian nervously looking behind him into the darkness.
That's wonderful. Now, that's a distinct tone. Very distinct tone for me, from what I heard from them, either of the Matimbas and also from the Birminghams. Scott is still looking for them, and it ties in with Sandy's question about them scent marking. So Sandy, I don't think the scent marking is affecting that. That injury to me looks old, and lions can cope with injuries like that. It looks like an internal muscular injury or perhaps a joint injury. They can cope with them, and clearly they are marking now vocally as well as with their urine. So that call that you can hear there is a territorial call. Now what they're doing, Brent, what have you think?
No, I thought I heard other lions responding, but quite far off.
I think that's a cicada.
No, I do know the difference between a cicada and a lion.
Okay,
Thank you,
well,
Jack.
that's good. Just to check. So they are definitely marking territory. Now, the question goes out to you, and of course the panel of geniuses by my side here, as to what on earth is going on. We've got a coalition takeover with 5 male lions supposedly chasing our 2 beloved Matimbas deep into the south and possibly into oblivion. And now these 2 fellows pitch up from where we don't know. What's going on? Brent, are they taking part in the takeover?
I think they might have seen a gap, and I think they are definitely a far bigger challenge than the Matimbas. They are in their prime, and as we've been watching, those Birminghams are just that little bit too young to really sort of dominate an area, and that's probably why they're killing all the lionesses as well. these guys are the right age. They're in prime condition. Even with that injury, I don't think if they got into a fight, that injury would affect him in the slightest. He would get stuck right in there. And I also think the Birminghams are possibly, I was chatting to Mike, and there's two big prides of lions to the east, the Talamatis and the Torchwoods. And the Birminghams seem to be trying to get towards that area at the moment. So, Jamie, what do you think?
No, I think it's definitely a power vacuum that's been created.
Yeah.
So they've chased the Matimbas away, and now they're a little bit too young. They don't actually seem too sure about what they're doing, and they're just skirting around the area. And while they've been doing that, there's two males who do know what they're doing and do know how to approach something like this, and they've just moved in.
Well,
Whether
also-
or not they stay, I don't know.
Nobody's been marking here, of course, for the
Yeah,
last
that's
while.
also
So
true.
Djuma has been basically a lion vacuum for the last, week or so until today.
Last night.
And last night. So very exciting to have some lions back on the property. But with the rain that fell last week, we had big rains last week, of course, which would have cleaned out most of the scent of any lion marking that there had been. The Timbers haven't marked here for weeks now. The Birminghams haven't probably marked here for some time. So there's just doesn't smell much of lion. So for two males coming into the area, it possibly does smell a bit more like, a bit less like lion, and like a good place to try and set up. So what we're going to do, while Scott is still trying to find them, let's go and have a look at the highlights package of his finding them this morning, and you can get a good look at those lions. Obviously it's a bit dark now, so the look that you're going to get of them when Scott does find them again isn't going to be what you had earlier, and possibly in the light of this grey eerie morning that we had today. So we'll show you those lions and see you just a little bit later.
And some space, because we don't know who they are. And judging by this one's behavior, he could charge the vehicle at any stage. He doesn't seem very happy with us. No. Sadly, this is the one that's very badly wounded. And I'm very happy I didn't bump into these guys on foot. Rubbing his head in this small apple leaf tree as a sign of him picking up the scent of other lion. And he may well scent mark as he passes by this bush. Here he goes. There we go. Well, very happy to see that it's not nearly as badly wounded as I thought it was when we saw it initially. Oh, I cannot believe how pretty he is. He's got a massive mane. So I'm just going to keep...
Spectacular view there of those two strangers come into our land where there has been a vacuum for the last week or so, and just as we were saying, the rain has probably washed away any scent of lion. Well, that lion scent is back now with a vengeance, with two big 7-year-old males. Now, Oki had a question.
Now, Oki's got a very interesting question, and it's all to do with the line dynamics that we've seen over the last few weeks. And we all know that a couple of the Nkuhuma females were killed by the Birmingham boys. And Oki, you were wondering if Junior's sort of constant presence with that pride, at an age where he really should start to move out, whether that's put them in any kind of danger. Now, there is a possibility, it's something that we have considered, that it might be causing a little bit of extra tension. However, it's something that I said on air a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember exactly when, but that I thought that maybe a lot of the friction from the line between the lionesses and the Birmingham boys might actually come from those lionesses protecting the two young sub-adult females. They're just at that age where they might be safe, but they might also not be. So it was just a question that I thought is a possibility. I don't necessarily think it's entirely based around Junior.
I think that's, to me, far more viable. So we did have a lot of postulation that perhaps the attempted defense of Junior from these lions is creating the conflict, which initially sounded quite plausible until I managed to remember that those two young lionesses are younger than Junior is, and so therefore the pride is probably trying to protect them, and it makes much more sense for them to protect the females in the pride than it would a big male who is actually at the moment something of a drain on their resources and an attractor of conflict. So it would make more sense if they were trying to protect those youngsters.
And unfortunately, very recently, 2 or 3 nights ago, they lost one of those youngsters. Was actually killed in the staff village of one of the lodges to the west of us. And Tristan, who works there, had a very little sleep that night with the lions fighting over the carcass of that lioness.
Then Deborah, you had a question about whether or not these 2 males would join the Matimbas or not. Deborah, no, I don't think they will. We don't think they are the northern Matimbas. Remember, the Matimba males were initially 5 males. One was went to meet his maker rather sooner than he would have hoped, and they split across, and there were 2 and 2, and then they seemed to be split again. The northern ones went a lot further north than these ones here. So these we don't think are the Matimbas, and we think they're possibly the Selatis, so they won't join with a strange coalition like the Matimbas. Right, without further ado,
Off to Scotty, who's
Scott.
found the lions.
You don't need to look at us anymore. We'll go across to them. See you just now.
Welcome back, everyone. And we got extremely lucky and managed to relocate these male lion. They're deep in the Mulwati. We've only got visual of one, and we are actually completely stuck where we are here. So I'm glad we've got a visual, but if they move, we cannot. We've got one tire completely spinning in the air, so we've got our work cut out for us here a little bit later. But very happy that at least we have got you another visual. And they have been continuing to vocalize, and they could, if we're lucky, vocalize again. This one's coming straight towards us. Cross behind the vehicle. And we're at an extremely awkward angle here, but getting you some great last views as he heads up. You can see this is the individual with the injured leg. And interestingly enough, just chatting to Jors, and he said he's seen these 2 male lions up in Buffelshoek chase 3 of the Birmingham males. It was a few months ago. And there he goes. I just need to chat to Jors quickly, the guy who's just given us that update on the other lions with the sighting with the Birmingham males. He's just found the other male on Gari Cutline. Copy, thanks Jors. We're actually stuck here, so we're going to try and get unstuck and then join you, the other individuals on his way towards you. Okay, so while we try and get unstuck here, we are going to send you back to the Fireside chats, and then I'm not sure if I am going to see you again. If I don't, thank you very much, but there is a chance if we do get unstuck, we might get you one last visual of these males.
Hello everybody, welcome back. Whoops, Scott will be buying the first round tonight.
He'll be severely mocked.
Yes, I'm normally the one being mocked, but I'm glad to see it isn't me today. I managed to extricate myself from where I was watching beautiful Sindile earlier on. Now, on to the other lions, of course. We had the Nkuhuma Pride, 3 of them yesterday, Brent and Jamie.
Yep.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about their hunt last night and why, or if they were successful?
Well, hang on to Jamie. She followed them across from Arethusa.
Well, it started sort of with the tail end of that buffalo herd and picked up on a little bit of anxiety amongst them, but I was desperately trying to find out on the radio where Junior had been seen, because obviously we were trying to follow up on that story. And I just said to the guys, listen, I'm going to do a loop around the back and see if these lions have been following the buffalo herd. Picked up on their tracks, and I called some of the Arethusa guys in. Sean called me in, and we had those 3 lionesses in the open patch, very clearly on the move from Arethusa and quite focused on what they were doing. So we headed across Triple M, and then we watched them move from termite mound to termite mound all the time, looking over and following just behind, and I was in communication the whole time with Brent, just trying to work out exactly where they were in relation to the buffalo herd until we got right up close to them. It was a really exciting evening. I mean, as soon as it got dark, we could see them start to go into a really serious mode. And for those 3 lionesses, it's a little bit tricky to try and get into a buffalo herd. So we watched a lot of backwards and forwards. I know when we were sitting switched off in the dark, it was very difficult to tell where they were until the entire herd stampeded basically straight into Brent.
Yes, I chose my position quite well, wait on the other side. But we're going to show you the clip of that right now, and then we'll chat a little bit more about it when we come back.
So you think it's Nkuhuma's? It is Nkuhuma's. Here we go. She's up now. Sorry guys, I was just talking to Tax, who thinks it might be the Nkuhuma's. Apparently there was a 4th lioness with them earlier today. Just have a look at the way that she's looking. She's looking directly in the direction of that buffalo herd. They're probably tucked away in the bushes. I just got a glimpse of them. They are probably, the closest one is about 100 meters away from where she is. And she's spotted them. She definitely knows they're there. The buffalo are a little bit dazed and confused at the moment. They know that the lions are here, but they're not quite sure which way they should be going.
But there we go. You see how there's a lioness in front of us testing. There was another lioness off to the side. And they're going to do this constantly. So the buffalo are well aware. That's why my lights are on. They know where the lions are. It's just for that initial sort of charge that we don't keep our lights on at night, because she's testing the buffalo. There she comes. She's testing the buffalo. There's probably one of the other lionesses close by. I saw 2 now, and they're looking for weakness. They're looking for a young calf or a sickly adult to take down. Away, but you see those are the big buffalo bulls on the edge that are forming a protective layer around the herd. So pushing these buffalo, pushing them, looking for that weakness, and quite often the buffalo will turn around and chase them, which is about to happen. Yeah, she's running from a buffalo. So it's very much a testing game. So unsuccessful. I thought I saw the buffalo turn around and chase the lions, but this is by no means over. And that was an absolutely incredible sighting. It was fascinating to watch the behavior there, how the lionesses just pushed and pushed and pushed on the edge of that herd, looking for that little bit of weakness, looking for a calf who suddenly might have been stepped on in that stampede. But for me, the most amazing thing is that noise when that buffalo herd goes. It's like the earth opens up. It's like an incredible earthquake. But we've got very good news.
Scott is unstuck.
Yes.
So we're going to say goodbye to you. Before we do, there was a brief hiatus or brief mistake, if you like, on the drive earlier. The thumb didn't get to greet you, so it's going to say goodbye. Thank you to Brian on camera. A big thank you to Louise and Nikki in the final control. Thank you, Brent and Jamie, very much. Brent will be going on leave on
Wednesday.
I will be going on Friday. I'm going to the United Kingdom to watch the great David Gilmour playing at the Royal Albert Hall. If you don't know who he is, you've been hiding under a rock. I will also be going to watch the Springbok rugby team playing in the Rugby World Cup, which will be marvellous fun. Right, without further ado, I think we'll head back across to Scott.
Oh, the lions are roaring. I think it's perfect timing.
All right.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And have a marvellous evening. See you in the morning.
Well, at least you can get to here. See if I can find him here. Okay. Well, it's very thick in there, and I actually couldn't see him initially, and I thought their roar was coming to a close, but there was kind of a final extra bitty added on at the end there. And isn't it wonderful that we've managed to both get unstuck and get you back into the action here? You can just see the one there. I'm not sure yours has the other one moved off already.
Yes, into the middle of this block here.
Okay.
He's not on the road itself.
Okay. So the other individual has moved off deeper into the thick bush here, still heading north back towards Buffalo's Hook. And this, the one with the slightly injured leg, is trying to catch up with him, and he's the one that's doing the vocalizing. The other one's keeping dead quiet, which is really interesting. Not too sure why that is. Here he's really making sure he leaves a clear scent trail behind, and by rubbing his feet like that in his own urine, he will continue to leave a trail of messages as he walks. That'll be a good message to other male lions that come through this area. Like I've said earlier, Jors has confirmed that he has seen these two individuals chase off 3 of the Birmingham males. In the Birmingham's defense, there was only 3 of them, not all 5, and it was a few months ago. But they have interacted with one another before. I just want to take this opportunity to try and get ahead of him. Just a couple of minutes left of drive. Thanks, Jors. And thankfully this is quite a wide road, so we should be able to sneak past him without interfering too much with his plans. Once we've got ahead of him, we can just reverse down the road and wait for him to approach us, getting you some great frontal views of him. Especially if he does in fact roar, then we will be in a great spot to receive that audio. Jors, if you don't mind shining your spotlight, that would help us greatly with some side lights. Oh, no problem, no problem. Okay, cheers, Jors. Sorry, a little bit of confusion here. I thought Jors was going to be staying in the sighting with us, but he's not. He's moving off. And what a beautiful, beautiful sight this is. I think he may let off another roar shortly. Or he may just keep walking up towards us. He's probably wondering where his mate's gone and why it's keeping so quiet. I think we might just extend the show by a few moments in the hope that we may get one full roar from him. But he, I think, is following the scent trail of his coalition partner, and it's into some very, very thick bush where it wouldn't make sense for us to follow him. And I think that, everyone, is sadly the last glimpse for now of these 2 beautiful big males. And I'm very happy that you guys at least got to hear a little bit of the audio, even though it wasn't the full show, and also get to see them on the move. You've got a much better idea now, I'm sure, of how majestic and powerful they are. Even this one that's got a bit of a wonky back end, he's still a very powerful male, and he's certainly, his front half makes up for that small limp that he's got. They're probably going to continue into Buffalo's Hook, so we might not see them for a few days, but the fact that they did come here, they have vocalized and scent marked, is very promising, and that indicates to me that that we can expect to see them here in the future. And that, coupled with Jors's information about them chasing off the Birmingham boys not so long ago, means there's some really exciting stuff that is going to unfold here in the coming weeks and months. Well, a big thanks to all of you guys for your help, questions, comments and support throughout all of the drives, but especially today. And well done to Jeandre on camera, and a big thanks to Nikki and Louise in the final control room. Hope you enjoyed the fireside chat and the safari. We'll see you all on the Sunset Drive.